The young farmer was driving back from town when she came across a massive tree blocking the dirt road. She pulled over, stepped out of her truck with caution, and walked closer to the fallen trunk. It was far too big to have come down on its own, and the break was way too clean to be natural. She tried to call someone for help, but there was no signal out there. That's when it hit her. This wasn't an accident, it was a trap. Two men on horseback, their faces hidden beneath bandanas, emerged from the brush. She took a few steps back, said she needed help, but they already knew that. That was exactly what they wanted. What they didn't expect was that she grew up in this land. She knew every animal in the region, especially the ones they were riding. The ambush. The sun was sinking low as the young woman farmer drove her pickup along the dirt road home. She'd spent the day in town, feed for the cattle, tools, tractor parts, her truck stacked to the roof. She handled the road with ease, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the window frame. No music, no chatter, just the hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel. Then she saw it. A tree trunk, massive, cut clean across the road. She braked, rolled to a stop. Too neat, too fresh to be natural. She shut off the engine and stepped out. Boots on dirt, silence heavy in the air. Her fingers brushed the raw bark. This wasn't an accident. She pulled her phone. No signal. Tried again. Nothing. That's when the sound came. Hooves. Slow. Steady. Two riders appeared from the brush, bandanas masking their faces. They didn't speak at first, just circled like wolves. "Trouble on the road, miss?" one asked, voice smooth but sharp underneath. She stood her ground. "Trees blocking the road, no service out here." "Well, ain't you lucky we showed up," he said, stepping closer, eyes hardening. The other tugged at his bandana, hand drifting to the grip of his gun. Her pulse quickened. The horses beneath them stamped and snorted, restless, ears twitching. She looked into their eyes. Something familiar flickered there, but the men didn't notice. "Get on the horse," the first one ordered, voice flat now, and she knew. This wasn't chance. This was a trap. The captive and the horse's fury. The man's grip on her arm was like iron. He hauled her up into the saddle with a force that left no room for hesitation. The leather was worn, slick with old sweat, the horse beneath her trembling with nervous energy. She didn't resist, not yet. She knew when to fight and when to wait. The second man swung her truck off the road, gunning the engine hard. The vehicle disappeared into the brush, cutting a path through weeds and narrow clearings only locals would know. The rider behind her steered his horse off the main road, following a trail carved long ago by cattle and wagons. Branches slapped against her shoulders, scratched her face. The air smelled of dust, cedar, and something else, something like decay. She knew this trail, and she knew where it led. Minutes later, the path opened into the clearing of a long-abandoned homestead. The house sagged on its foundation, windows shattered, porch slumped under years of rot. The kind of place locals whispered about but never set foot near. Perfect for men who didn't want to be seen. The rider yanked her down, her boots slammed into the dirt, a puff of dry dust rising on impact. The other man parked the truck at an angle, its open door creaking in the stillness. Without a word, the two forced her inside. The stench hit first, mold, old wood, animal nests. Shadows draped over broken furniture and cobwebs stretched across cracked beams. Yet the men weren't bothered. Their eyes burned with something else. Intent. She tried to pull away, but the man shoved her back against the wall. The door slammed shut with a hollow thud that echoed through the house like a coffin ceiling. She screamed. Not a small cry, but a raw, desperate roar that filled the empty rooms. Outside, the horses exploded into motion. The first shrieked, a piercing cry that rattled through the timbers. The second reared, slamming hooves into the ground, jerking the reins until the porch posts groaned under the strain. Their fury grew with every one of her cries. The dirt churned, the air thick with their rage. Inside, the men exchanged uneasy looks. One pulled the curtain aside, peeking through a shattered window. "They're going wild out there," he muttered. "Forget it. They're just horses," the other spat, grabbing her by the wrist. But they weren't just horses. Every time she screamed, the animals struck harder. The porch quaked under pounding hooves. Boards splintered, the old structure trembling like it wouldn't hold. Her voice rose again, a plea torn from the gut. "Help me!" That was the breaking point. The wood outside gave way with a thunderous crack. The reins snapped, posts ripped free from the porch as if torn by a storm. In one violent surge, the horses broke loose. The door didn't stand a chance. It exploded inward with a deafening crash, shards of wood flying across the room. The first man took the blow full in the chest, flung back against the wall like a rag doll. The second stumbled, reaching for his weapon, but a hoof struck his leg with a sickening crack that dropped him instantly. The house shook with chaos. Snorts, hooves, the roar of destruction. The men were no match for the fury of the animals they thought they owned. The air filled with dust and the sound of vengeance. The young woman pressed herself against the wall, frozen in awe and terror as the animals unleashed their storm. But amid the violence, their eyes kept cutting back to her, watching, guarding, protecting. And in that moment, she understood. They weren't just fighting for freedom. They were fighting for her. Home again, and the consequences. When the storm inside that old house finally went quiet, only the sound of heavy breathing filled the air. The two men lay sprawled on the floor, battered and broken, their plans shattered in the dust. The horses stood tall among the wreckage, flanks heaving, nostrils flaring, eyes blazing with a rage that slowly softened the moment they turned toward her. She stepped forward, unsteady, brushing dirt from her face. The fear was still there, but beneath it, something else. Gratitude, recognition. She reached out with a trembling hand, and one of the horses lowered its head, letting her touch its damp, sweat-streaked neck. A bond older than memory sparked back to life. By the time her father arrived, galloping hard, shotgun strapped across his back, the scene was already decided. He froze on the threshold, his eyes wide at the sight of his daughter alive, the outlaws unconscious, and those two horses standing guard over her like ancient sentinels. "These horses," he whispered, stepping closer, his voice caught between disbelief and awe. "They were ours. I sold them years ago. And now—" He shook his head, unable to finish. The police came not long after, hauling the men away in chains. No paperwork, no questions. Everyone could see the truth. Those animals didn't belong to the bandits. They never had. They belonged here, with her. And so, as the sun set blood red across the fields, the young woman led them home. The drive back was slow, deliberate. The horses walked beside the truck free, their shadows stretching long against the fading light. She leaned out the window, running her hand along their strong necks, whispering, "Thank you." They answered with soft, steady breaths, as if they understood every word. At the ranch, the gates opened like they'd been waiting all these years. The animals stepped onto familiar ground, hooves pressing into earth that once carried them as colts. She guided them into the old stable, scattering fresh hay and water like an offering. It wasn't just shelter, it was restoration. Her father stood in the doorway, hat in hand, watching in silence. For the first time in a long time, his hardened eyes softened. "They remembered us," he said almost to himself. She nodded, stroking one of the horse's manes. "Because we never forgot them." That night, the ranch felt alive again. The air was calmer, the stars brighter, as if the land itself recognized what had been returned. Yet beneath the peace, there was an unspoken truth. The story wasn't finished. The men would one day walk free again, and when they did, they would remember. But for now there was only victory, survival, and reunion. And if you stayed with this story until the very end, it means something in it spoke to you. About memory, about courage, about the way animals never forget kindness. So here's my question for you. Do you believe animals remember the ones who loved them first? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And don't forget, hit that like button if this story moved you, and subscribe so you don't miss the next tale. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until tomorrow, same time, same place.